future tenses. So in order to do that, we're going to be looking at three elements to this. We're going to be looking at identifying whether a sentence is written in the simple past, present or future. We're going to be then thinking about being able to write our own sentences in each of the three tenses. And really importantly, to have a look at a piece of writing to identify where there are mistakes in the tense and being able to correct them. So when we're writing, we always need to make sure that we're writing in the correct tense. So for instance, if we're talking about things that have already happened, if we were writing a newspaper report or a recount, we would write in the past tense to show that it has happened in the past. If we're writing about things that are happening now, so maybe like in a diary entry, we would use the present tense and know if we were talking about it as if it was happening to us right now. And if we're talking about things that have not happened yet, but could happen and will happen later, we use the future tense. So we're going to be having a look at how we can choose the right verbs to write in the past, the present, and the future. One word might be the difference between whether a tense is written in past, present, or future. So it's really important that we understand how we can use the verbs to swap between the tenses by simply editing and changing that verb. So it's up to you how you want to set out any notes you're making. You could split your page into three columns like this and have the past, present, future. You could have it on three different pages. It's completely up to you. Now for this, if you're watching as a PowerPoint or a video, you can pause it at any time. Any notes and things that you take from this, you've then got to practice and revise for before the grammar quiz on Friday. So it's up to you what you jot down, what's important for you to write down. Okay, so we're going to start with the simple past tense. Okay. And to do so, we have two parts to it. We have the subject and the past form of the verb. Now the subject, which is the bit in green, literally is the person, thing, whatever is doing the verb. So for instance, our first one says the dog barked. So the subject is green, the dog is the person, thing doing the barking. And we use the past form of the verb to bark, which is barked. So the dog barked, and you can hear from that past form of the verb bark that it happened previously. The dog barked means it's already happened. Have a look at the second one. The cake smelled delicious. So the cake is the subject, smelled is the verb. Now you can see that the ed, smelled, means that it has happened in the past. So we are using the past tense. We played football at lunchtime. So we as the subject, the people doing the playing, but it's not we play football, it's we played football. So you can hear again, it's in the past tense, it already happened either earlier today or yesterday, whatever it might be. And then we've got it rained all day. Rained, again you can hear, means that it had already happened. So all of these so far use that ed ending, and that's very common. Lots and lots of times you will just use the ed at the end of the verb to make it into the past. But we need to be careful because that doesn't always work. For instance, if we want these to be in the past and you were going to use the verb run, you wouldn't say I runned to the park. And actually we need to change that verb slightly to become I ran to the park. If you were going to say use the verb to go, you wouldn't say I goed to school. That verb go changes to went to school. And you wouldn't say she throwed the ball. We would say she threw the ball. So sometimes we've got to be careful with these past tense verbs. They're not always just ed at the end of it. It's if that verb needs to change. But you can hear again for all of these, I ran to the park, I went to school, she threw the ball, means that they've all happened previously. So we are still writing in that past tense. Okay, with the present tense is very similar. Again, we have the subject, the person or thing doing the verb, but this time we use the present form of it, so it's not going to have the ed ending. So before, in the past, it was the dog barked. Now we have the dog barks. And you can hear that that means that it's happening now. The dog barks means it's happening at this time, so it's in the present tense. Before, it was the cake smelled delicious when it was in the past tense. Because it's happening now, we have the cake smells delicious. It could be yesterday we played football at lunchtime, but if it was happening now in our present tense, we would say we play football at lunchtime. And rather than it saying it rained all day, if it's happening right now, you could say it rains all day. So with the present tense, it's changing that verb, the bit in red, to so that it's happening right now. So it's not the past form of the verb, it's the present form of it. And then finally, the simple future tense. This time we have the subject. And we use the present form of the verb, but this time we've got the added word will. Because in the past we had the dog barked. In the present we have the dog barks. But if it's going to happen, we use that word will. The dog will bark, which means it hasn't happened yet. It's not happening now, but it's going to happen in the future. So we show it its future tense. If the cake hasn't been made yet, so it didn't smell delicious, it hasn't smelled delicious, but the cake will smell delicious. Now, if it's not lunchtime yet, but you know what's going to happen, you wouldn't say we played football because it hasn't happened yet. We will say we will play football at lunchtime because that is going to happen in the future. And if you're looking at the weather forecast for tomorrow, it hasn't happened yet, but you know that it will rain all day. So, I want to have a look at these 4 sentences. I want you to decide, are they written in the past, the present, or the future tense? And then can you explain to someone at home, what word is it? What is the verb that tells you whether it's past, present, or future? So look at these 4 sentences. We've got the man reads his book. I climbed to the top of the tree. Susie will win the race. And I caught the ball in one hand. So for each of those sentences, can you decide whether it's past, present, or future? And what part of the sentence is it that tells you what tense it's written in? The final thing we're going to look at is where we need to correct errors. Now, one thing I've seen when I've seen your writing as individuals or as a class is that it's very easy to mix up our tenses. So if we're telling a story in past tense, to accidentally sometimes use the present tense or vice versa, and we get mixed up a bit. So I'm writing my story in the past tense. However, twice I've made a mistake and I've written in the wrong tense. So I'd like you to read this short paragraph and see if you can spot the 2 times that I've used the wrong verb and then correct it for me. So pause the video now, have a read through this carefully. Can you spot where are the 2 times where I should have written in past tense but I haven't, I've written in a different tense? So well done. If you could spot the 2 times where we've got our present tense instead of the past tense. First of all, in the second line, it says its blade shines in the dark. Now that's happening right now. If it was in the past tense, this is quite a hard verb, this one. What verb should be the past of shines? You would say the blade shone in the dark. Now that means it's already happened and it's in the past tense. The rest is all past tense, with her hands shook with fear, but her voice was calm as she shouted. That's all fine. But suddenly, in the third sentence, we then make another mistake. Suddenly, the dragon flies down from its nest. And well done if you spotted that verb flies is in the present tense. So what was the past tense of flies? We should say the dragon flew down from its nest and landed in front of Mrs. Warren. So to recap, the three things we're looking at this week is to identify whether a sentence is written in the past, present or future tense, to be able to write our own sentences using them, and just like in that last section there, to be able to identify where things are written in the wrong tense and to be able to correct them. Now, all three of those are important because they will come up in the grammar quiz on Friday. And this Friday, we'll be looking at the new work on the past, present and future tenses, plus we're going to be thinking back to the pronouns from last week. So you've got the rest of this week to have a think, to have a practice about using them. You take a book, read a paragraph from a book. Can you see, is it written in the past, present or future? Which are the verbs that tell you which one it is? So good luck with this. If you get stuck, let me know and I will give you a hand. So well done.